Welcome. This is session number 3 of the 2020 Self-Study Institute. First, we'll hear a word from our sponsor.
As a long-standing sponsor at our annual conference, we are grateful to our 2020 Self-Study Institute sponsor, Weave. Weave is the leading provider of software for educational programs, institutions, and accrediting bodies to manage all accreditation-related work. They provide a platform that vastly simplifies the management of institutional effectiveness, including functionality to simplify accreditation, strategic planning, assessment, and program review processes. If you are interested in their services or product, you can outreach to them at www.weaveeducation.com.
My name is Edna Corbett. I'm a Vice President for Institutional Field Relations with the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. I will be narrating the session. In this session, we will be covering 2 topics: approaches to self-study and overview of the self-study design. Please note that this is a pre-recorded session and you will not have the opportunity for live Q&A. However, you may save your questions and submit them during the next live session or send your questions to your Vice President Liaison. Also, this session includes a worksheet, which you should have access from the box link that was sent to you via email. Or you can go to the slide deck of the overview and you will see a link on slide 62. I will refer to the worksheet at various points during this session. On the screen is the Middle States Commission on Higher Education disclaimer statement. This presentation you are viewing has been prepared by and is the property of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. Reproduction, distribution, or transmission of the presentation, in part or in whole, is expressly prohibited without prior written consent from MSCHE. You can read the rest of it. I just want to highlight that this presentation is not intended as a substitute for professional advice from MSCHE staff, or use of the presentation does not guarantee any specific accreditation outcome. As with all of our training sessions, we have identified learning outcomes for this session. Note that these learning outcomes are for both topics. The learning outcomes are: at the end of this training module, you will be able to 1. Understand the differences between the 2 approaches to self-study. 2. Determine which approach is most appropriate for the institution to conduct its self-study. 3. Make the connection between the self-study design and the work of the steering committee and working groups. In particular, how the self-study design serves as a guide for the self-study process and enables the steering committee and working groups to conceptualize and organize relevant tasks. And 4. Begin to develop an effective self-study design. We will first review approaches to the self-study. We have 2 approaches to self-study: standards-based and priorities-based. The self-study evaluation is a comprehensive review of the 8-year accreditation review cycle we discussed in session 1. During self-study, the institution documents compliance with Commission standards for accreditation, requirements of affiliation, policies and procedures, and federal compliance requirements. The self-study process culminates in a written self-study report and evidence, which are reviewed by a team of peer evaluators and verified at the on-site evaluation visit. Institutions may choose either approach. Which one you choose will depend on the characteristics of the institution and how the institution chooses to approach the self-reflection process. As you will see, the approach chosen will impact the work of the steering committee and the working groups, as well as how the self-study report is organized. The standards-based approach takes a comprehensive view of the institution. Every single standard is addressed individually in the self-study. Applicant institutions are required to use this approach. Additionally, the majority of the MSCHE institutions have chosen to use this approach over the last 5 years because they wanted to become thoroughly familiar with the new standards. Also, if the institution has been in non-compliance status or has been required to submit a progress or monitoring report within the last accreditation cycle, it is a good idea to choose this approach. In the standards-based approach, the self-study report is organized by standard. Usually institutions assign one chapter per standard, but they're not required to do so. However the self-study report is organized, all standards must be addressed. You have heard that institutions must identify priorities to be addressed during the self-study. These priorities are integrated within the standards, as you will hear during session 4 of the Institute. Once the institutional priorities are identified, you should do a thorough analysis of how the various aspects of the priority relate to the various standards. For example, if creating a culture of assessment is one of the institutional priorities, this priority clearly relates to Standard 5, but can also be related to other standards, especially Standard 6. The number of working groups will depend on institutional capacity. In very small institutions, working groups may work with several standards each, while in larger institutions, a working group is identified for each standard. The priorities-based approach also takes a comprehensive view of the institution, but from a different perspective. All standards are addressed in the self-study, but they are integrated within the institutional priorities. The institution must clearly state their rationale for choosing this approach, and they must remember that all standards need to be addressed in their self-evaluation. Institutions with a track record of compliance may choose this approach to use the self-study process as an integral part of their strategic planning. In the priorities-based approach, the self-study process is usually organized by priority, assigning one working group per priority. It is possible to have a standard or two that are not directly connected to an institutional priority. In that case, a separate chapter is included in the self-study report. However the self-study report is organized, all standards must be addressed. Again, once the institutional priorities are identified, you should do a thorough analysis of how the various aspects of the priority relate to the various standards. There is no specific requirement that each priority must have only one standard. However, you must make sure not to overlook any aspect of the standards or their corresponding criteria. Just like the standards-based approach, the number of working groups will depend on institutional capacity. Usually, one priority is assigned to each group. The evidence inventory is an organizational tool that allows an institution to collect evidence and document compliance with the Commission's standards for accreditation, requirements of affiliation, policies and procedures, and federal compliance requirements. Regardless of which approach you choose, the evidence inventory will be uploaded the same way. The evidence inventory organizes documents by standard, criterion, and requirement of affiliation, and provides this evidence in one readily accessible place for the institution's designated contacts, for the peer evaluators, and for the Commission. As you can see on the screenshot, the tab for evidence is clearly identifiable at the top of the institution portal. The red numbers you see next to each standard correspond to the number of criteria for each of the standards. As you upload documents, you will see the numbers change. For example, 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6, and so on. Also, evidence must be uploaded for each of the requirements of affiliation. I remind you that MSCHE has recorded a series of videos that will teach you how to navigate the portal. If you have a technical question, please contact support@msche.org. In the activities booklet, go to page 4, activity 3. These are the tasks on your worksheet for this session. You may pause the recording now and work on these tasks with your colleagues, or you may complete the tasks after you finish the session. I remind you that if you have any questions, please contact your Vice President Liaison or bring up your questions at the next live session. This ends the section on approaches to self-study. Now we will move on to talk about the self-study design template. The template is included in Appendix A of your activities booklet. Please download it and look at it along with me. The self-study design is a document developed by the institution to serve as a guide for the self-study process. It enables the steering committee and working groups to conceptualize and organize relevant tasks. It serves as a clear guide for the work to be conducted over the 2 years of the self-study process. The self-study design is submitted to the Commission staff liaison, who must accept the self-study design before an institution may proceed with the self-study. We cannot emphasize enough the importance of the self-study design. Over the years, we have seen a correlation between a well-crafted design and a well-conducted self-study process. Please give sufficient attention to this phase of the process and make sure you are in close contact with your Vice President Liaison, who will assist you and provide significant feedback on your work. The self-study design communicates important information to 3 audiences: the campus, the team chair, and the Commission Vice President Liaison. First, the self-study design should be organized in such a way that it helps the steering committee and the working groups conceptualize and organize the tasks before them to facilitate the self-study. They should refer to it often throughout the process. The campus community in general is also an important audience, as this document provides a glimpse of the incredible amount of work that is being done and gives them a meaningful framework for understanding how everyone on campus should participate. Second, as soon as the evaluation team chair is elected, the institution should share with him or her a copy of the self-study design. Again, it provides a framework for understanding the work being done and provides background and context for when the team chair first reviews the draft of the self-study report and visits the institution ahead of the on-site evaluation team visit. Finally, the self-study design allows your Vice President Liaison to get to know your institution better, especially as they provide feedback on the development of the document. In as concise and clear a manner as possible, the self-study design should include all the sections I am about to describe. While we provide it as a fillable template, you may produce your own document as long as all the elements are included. You may be as creative as you would like it to be. Section 1 is the institutional overview. These are the main areas to be included. Demographics, economic factors, and many other factors affect the life of our institutions. Please make sure to depict in a succinct way those that have impacted your institution in the past few years. Remember that the team chair is one of your primary audiences. This section should provide a general overview so an external audience can learn about what's important for your institution. Do not include a long history of your institution, but include important milestones. Do include your mission statement, your vision statement, and your institution's strategic goals. These items will provide the context for the institutional priorities you will identify later in the document. Key environmental factors include issues that have had an impact on your institution's recent history. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic is a factor, and you should provide a brief overview of the impact of the pandemic on your institution. Do not forget to include information such as recent institutional reorganizations, a presidential transition, or any other major events of this type. Main programs of study give us a rapid overview of the type of institutions we're working with, as well as your student population. You can include demographic and achievement data on your students. Finally, as you identify your institutional priorities, you will need to come back to this section to make sure that you have provided some context here. For example, if improvement of financial situation is one of your priorities, this section should include some information regarding current financial indicators. Another example, if greater student engagement is one of your priorities, You could include some survey data, such as NESI or the SESI, or any other data that indicates the current status of the institution. On the screen, you will see the questions included in your worksheet for this section. Go to the Activities booklet, pages 4 and 5. With your fellow participants, please discuss these questions and develop an outline of what you will include in the overview. You will discuss your answers to these questions in the breakout room with your VP liaison and the co-facilitator during the next live session. Session 2 of the Self-Study Design Template is Institutional Priorities to be addressed in the self-study. We recommend that you choose 3 to 5 institutional priorities. Priorities should be chosen through an inclusive process, and your priorities should be aligned with your mission and goals and your strategic plans, as well as the Commission standards for accreditation. In Session 4 of SSI, you will be completing additional work related to the identification of institutional priorities. In the meantime, we suggest you begin to discuss with your institutional leaders what priorities would be most appropriate for including in the self-study. It would be helpful if you have at least a tentative list prior to that session. Section 3 is Intended Outcomes of the Self-Study. Intended outcomes state what the institution plans to achieve through the self-study process. These are not your institutional priorities, but opportunities derived from and ancillary benefits of engaging in a process of self-reflection. The Commission has identified 3, which are listed on the screen. First, you definitely want to be reaffirmed. Second, the MCHE requires that you identify opportunities for improvement and innovation resulting from your analysis of institutional data. And third, you want to engage in a participatory, collaborative process. You may identify additional outcomes for your institution. We suggest you engage the steering committee in this discussion. We have seen some very creative outcomes from our institutions. You may want to ask your VP liaison for the ones that have caught their attention. This topic will be discussed more in depth in Session 4. In Section 4, you will identify the self-study approach you have chosen. As noted earlier, you may choose one of 2 approaches to self-study, standards-based or priorities-based. Include here a rationale for choosing your approach. Section 5 is Organizational Structure of the Steering Committee. The Steering Committee provides oversight to ensure support for evaluation and assessment of the institution's compliance with the Middle State standards and the priorities selected for analysis in the self-study document. In this section, you will provide essential information on the membership of the Steering Committee, basic information about the members, and a list of responsibilities for the committee. Session 5 of the Institute will address this topic in depth, and you will also have the opportunity to discuss these items with your Vice President Liaison and the co-facilitator. Section 5 also includes information on the composition of the working groups. For each working group, you will provide names and titles of the chairperson and the members with their roles at the institution, and you will also include which institutional priorities each working group will address. This is one of the most important sections of the design because it will provide clear and specific guidance to the working groups on the tasks they need to perform. As you probably recall, earlier in this session we mentioned that the self-study approach selected will impact the working group composition. Additionally, the working groups are to develop and carry out inquiry plans to not only examine compliance with the Commission standards for accreditation, requirements of affiliation, accreditation relevant fair requirements, and MSCHE policies and procedures, but also will address the institutional priority. Again, Session 5 will discuss this topic in depth. Section 6 is Guidelines for Reporting. The guidelines for reporting are included in the self-study design as another point of guidance for the working groups as well as for the steering committee. Include here specific products to be completed, such as inquiry plans and initial outlines of chapters. In addition to creating templates and setting deadlines for draft reports and final reports, some institutions develop other guidelines, such as naming conventions for files and have to manage requests for data and documentation. You may also include reporting lines if the chairs of the working groups are not members of the steering committee. And of course, deadlines are important. They may be included here or in the self-study timeline, which was covered in session 2. A sample working group report is available in Module 5 of the self-study guide. Section 7. It may seem early to be thinking of the organization of the self-study report, but this will also help in guiding the tasks completed by the working groups. A description of the main elements of the self-study report is included in Module 5 of the self-study guide. MSCHE has received permission from several institutions to share their self-study reports with you. You can access them in the virtual reading room. Section 8 is the verification of compliance strategy. Each institution is required to complete a verification of compliance with accreditation-relevant federal regulations. A current template for submission of the verification of compliance is available on our website. This report will be uploaded to the MSCHE portal at the same time as the self-study report and will be reviewed as part of the on-site evaluation visit. In the self-study design, you will include your strategies for completing this task. Some institutions assign a special working group for this. Others assign this task to the group working with Standard 2. Yet others have the steering group co-leaders work with their respective institutional officers to gather this information. You decide what works best for your institution. Section 9 is the self-study timetable. This includes the major milestones in the self-study process. You have already viewed and recorded a webinar on this topic, so I will not go into it here. Section 10 is the communication plan. The communication plan is used to regularly update the institutional community for gathering input and communicating progress. In the plan, you will include items such as intended audiences, communication methods, and timing. During this institute, you will begin to work a plan for your institution, and this will be done in session 6. Section 11 is the evaluation team profile. In this section, you will get the opportunity to tell the middle stage staff what characteristics you desire in a team chair and the team members. The commission staff will identify potential peer evaluators with the appropriate expertise and training to review the institution's specific programming and methods of delivery, as well as the specific circumstances of the accreditation activity being conducted. The team chair is usually an executive administrator at a comparable school. The team chair will communicate directly with your president or CEO, and therefore it is important to get your president's view on the characteristics desired for the team chair. The evaluation team will usually have expertise in the various areas covered by the standards. It is required that the team include a faculty member and a finance expert. Also in Section 11, to assist the Commission staff in selecting the peer evaluators, it is helpful to have a list of comparable peer institutions and aspirational peer institutions. If there's a conflict of interest with a particular institution, please let us know. In general, institutions within the same sports conference do not represent a conflict. And please consult with your institution's VP liaison if you have any questions. Do remember that, although we may ask for your preferences, the final decision about the team membership remains with the Commission and its staff. Section 12 is the evidence inventory strategy. As noted earlier in this session, the evidence inventory organizes documents by standard, criterion, and requirement of affiliation. Institutions utilize various strategies to initially populate and then refine the evidence inventory. In the self-study design, you will not provide a list of the proposed documents to be included in the evidence inventory. Rather, you will describe the strategy you will use to gather and organize the documentation. More detailed information on the evidence inventory is found in Module 6 of the Self-Study Guide, and it will be the focus of Session 8. And now, let's review again the learning outcomes for this session. We talked about the differences between the two approaches to self-study, and you should have had a discussion with your colleagues to decide which approach is most appropriate for you. The overview of the self-study design template showed you all the different areas that will be needed to be planned for conducting the self-study. We hope you have been able to see that the self-study design is an essential part of the process. Without a cohesive plan, institutions will not be able to conduct an effective self-study. Some sections of the self-study design will need to be discussed in depth in future sessions. However, as noted on the worksheet, some sections of the self-study design are rather self-explanatory. You should begin to flesh out some of those sections, such as the guidelines for reporting and the organization of the self-study report. We have come to the end of the session. Next, you will participate in a live webinar to discuss identifying institutional priorities and self-study outcomes. Also, as the self-study process requires that you identify opportunities for improvement and innovation, you will discuss how to use the self-study as a catalyst for innovation. That session will be held on Friday, October 9th at 9 a.m.
Again, we would like to thank our sponsor, Weave. For more information about their services and products, please visit www.weaveeducation.com.
Thank you very much for completing the session.